This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome back everyone to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast. I'm once again Tony Black and you are listening to our coverage of minute 22 of the X-Files Fight the Future. This minute begins at 21 minutes precisely as Mulder and Scully climb out of their crashed car following the Dallas Federal Building explosion and ends at 21 minutes and 59 seconds at FBI headquarters as we glimpse Skinner at the Office of Professional Review panel. So to discuss this minute, I'm joined again by X-Cast patron and regular guest, Kurt North. We're all about the aftermath, Kurt, today.
We are, and it's not Steve Skinner. Just to be absolutely clear, it's not Steve Skinner. So we're all right. Yes, the aftermath. It's this is going to be my final minute until later on in the show. So looking forward to topping this off to the professional review board and seeing how we get on from there. Yeah,
because this is the scene, essentially the big scene change. This one, isn't it? Because for the last good few minutes now, we've had the entire sequence of the federal building and the explosion and everything building up to that. So we've had a long sequence in the same place at the same time, and this is the one where we cut to something completely different and we start moving the plot along. So, but before that, we have got the aftermath of the explosion. So obviously, in the last episode, we talked about the big boom and a lot of the detail that went into that. And now you've got, as Mulder and Scully get out the car, you've got another I think it's quite a really good shot by Rob Bowman where the camera pulls around Mulder and Scully from behind them and you see the devastation of this building that is destroyed. This is CGI, I think. This is on green screen where they're looking at whatever and then they've CGI'd in the building, the destroyed building, the miniature, I would assume. I feel like you can if you look at it now and you know it's CGI, I think you can tell it's CGI a little bit, this one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You can tell it's some form of green screen, definitely.
I think you've got to know that though. I wonder if people going in, I don't necessarily think they would know that, you know. But people who don't study filmmaking and things, that might be that they just think that's a really, you know, I don't know. Do people really think that these things have actually been done? You know, do they really think people have blown up half an actual building? I always wonder that.
Anything is possible.
It is the movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all part of the miniature. And you mentioned it briefly in the last episode, I think, but you've got paper floating down as part of the debris, you know. But these were actually postage stamps or pieces of paper the size of postage stamps anyway. And they were floated down quite slowly to give the impression of weight and size in terms of this building, even though this is still a 45 foot miniature. Only it's there to give the impression of a massive destroyed visage. I thought that was clever. It's visual tricks, isn't it? That these people are very good at conveying.
Yeah, it's adding layers to create depth. You know, see if you've got things in front of the miniature, and as I say, it's postage stamp. You'll see scenes. I think things like Alien, where they look at long corridors, and you know all that is pretty much a matte painting. But the having the part of the building in front of you, having the tunnel in front of you, creates that illusion of depth. So you're doing things like postage stamps and pieces of paper like that really, really works, to that degree, because you're not just having the image of the little tiny explosions and things like that. But I would also say that a 45 foot miniature is quite a large miniature as well. It's still quite big.
It is big. And I think they talk about that in the commentary about how it's a sizable, I mean, we say miniature, that's still big. Yeah. 40 foot is still big. But it comparatively, it's designed to, you know, to replicate something vast, 45, and they can build that somewhere and blow it up, relatively easily, But whereas I don't know how big the actual federal building would be, but it's obviously that's too big scale, to do that. But it's right, isn't it? The same miniature. It's not really 44. It's like calling Godzilla a miniature,
I mean, it must have been on the. I would assume it's on the Fox lot that they would have done that. So not the Fox, 20th Century Fox lot. Yeah. So and that's a staple of many a show and many of a movie where they've used that sort of size. But I mean, 45 foot, as I say, for a company that's used to doing TV on a TV budget and having the ability to build something that big. And to blow it up and to film it various different angles and have all the technology behind them. And it's not CGI, especially being, 1997, 98 when this was filmed. I think it was the right choice and it really works, practically as well. So it's good. It is good. It is well put together. It's a good take when you've just got Mulder and Scully sort of in the midst of this, just looking quite shell-shocked. What I do actually, just, you mentioned about the police car, a nice little touch. And it makes sense, but whereas when Mulder gets out of the car, he has to get his hand out the window because he's in the back of the police car. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So he can't open it. Of course. I hadn't thought of that. That's true. He'd have to reach through the window and unhook it from. Yeah. Yeah, so I thought that was a nice little touch, the way that they filmed that was really good. And on top of the car as well, just while I remember that the stunt double, I think it was either the stunt double or Scully's double, was asked, would you be in the car when the explosion kicks off so we can have a shot? And she agreed to that. So without her agreeing to that, we wouldn't have had some of the shots that we had. Well, that's good. And it does help because you do get some in-car shots that are, it does help sell that. But they're in the middle of this. I mean, I know this was the previous minute, but I think we forgot to mention it. But when we see Mulder and Scully in the car, they put that onto a jerry-rigged hydraulic device. Yes. And then they shot fireballs out the back of the car to make it look like, and in front of the building to make it look like they were in front of it. So that's how they did that. And then obviously, as I said there, with the getting out of the car with the hooking and then staying on Scully for quite some time at the right before the OPR bit, I thought was, as you say, sheer shock and stuff, which I really liked. Yeah, that's a good point about the car. Yeah, I completely forgot to mention. I'd seen that in the behind the scenes footage. Yeah, about the the hydraulics and stuff like that. But it's so inventive. It's really good. So yeah, you've got some quite mournful sort of music after the big explosion from Mark Snow, which drifts us into the first major cut of it, in terms of transition from this entire protracted scene, which is to the FBI and in Washington DC, our home usually of where a lot of the episodes tend to start. Although crucially in this film we don't get the office, do we? And this is the thing. There's no X-Files office in this film because it's been burnt down at the end. In season 5. I mean, while we're on that subject, what do you think about that? I think it's a shame we didn't get to see, because we don't get it in I Want to Believe either, because by then they're not working at the FBI in the same way. That's true. Yeah, we've never seen the office on a big screen, which I think is a real shame. Yeah, I mean, we get Mulder's corridor, but we don't get and we get his apartment, don't we, later on? Yeah, so we do get his apartment, but we don't get. Is good. Yeah. Yeah, we don't. It is a shame, actually. I never thought about that, the fact that we don't see it. And, it's, I don't know. I mean, obviously it was retrofitted when we had the burning of the X-Files and the fact that they were off the X-Files for the film itself. And then this is all about reopening the X-Files, which is kind of, it's disappointing. It's disappointing. But the thing is, and I'm sure we will get into this during this minute podcast special, over time, but really, I don't really think there was any need for them to close them in the first place. Like, I mean, it works as a good way to end season 5. Don't get me wrong; quite an apocalyptic burning of the X-Files and all this kind of thing. But you didn't have to have them off the X-Files in this film, because ultimately it's called the X-Files. The film's called the X-Files. You didn't have to do a lot to include that. So I think it's on the one hand, it allows them the freedom to not be, have the sequence of The Office and Mulder explaining things. But on the other, it robs you, actually, of an iconic moment, I think, of having on the big screen what has become part of an iconic thing in The X-Files of Mulder briefing Scully on a mystery. There's no reason why you couldn't have had him
them come down to that office and have him explain a little bit of what he's found with Kurzweil or whatever later. And, this is what's happening. There's something going... you could have done something like that or had a body in the morgue on the script. There's all that. Yeah. I just think that's... I understand why they did it. And maybe they were worried that a basement office they wouldn't really be able to put on film and make it look good. But I think it's a shame, really.
Yeah,
but,
I do, yeah.
But there you go. Can't do anything about that. We at least get the FBI and we're in, the Office of Professional Review. And we're in the middle of a spiel by one of the assistant directors, Jaina Cassidy, who we've never met before. She's a new creation for this film, and I think we only see her in this film, actually.
Yeah.
Played by Blythe Danner, who I think is a good example of how Fight the Future works to getting actors who are slightly bigger than telly.
When I looked at some of the things that we were going to look at over... So especially our episodes that we've got, the ones I've got later on with the likes of Armin Muller-Stahl and Blythe Danner here, that they're well-known people, but they're not A-star people, if that makes sense.
No,
they're not like a Liam Neeson or a Tom Cruise, but they're well-known, well-established. And I think that Chris Carter's generally liked people from a theatre and musical background. So I think that, like Blythe Danner, I think she was well known for a Broadway. I think she had an award for a Broadway thing, which I can't quite remember what it was called now. But I recognise her from recently from Paul. She was in Paul, and she was in Will and Grace as well. But yeah, I think that, as you say, having someone who's slightly more well. I mean, obviously Martin Landau's completely different because he's a legend. But having those people that are slightly more well known really works, and it never distracted for me that the fact that these people were in. And I know that one of the things about the X-Files is they didn't want to have people of well known because it would take you out. I know they started to do it in season 6 onwards. Started to bring people in, but here, it's just enough, and it gives enough credence because the actors they've picked really suit the roles. It's almost as if they've actually did the role. They actually made the roles for those people.
Yeah, you're right there. And they're sort of in the middle, aren't they, as well, in terms of fame? Like, Martin Landau, obviously, is historically famous for Mission Impossible and various things after that. But at this point, he's coming off the back of Ed Wood as well. And I think he won the Oscar, or he got an Oscar nomination for playing Bela Lugosi in Ed Wood, which is easily Tim Burton's best film, and it's a great movie. And yeah, I think he was Oscar nominated for something else in the 80s as well. So he's always been ticking along as a well-known character actor. So everyone knows who Martin Landau is, really. Most people do. Armin Muller-Stahl is probably better known for, and we'll talk more about him later, I know, in these minutes. I think you're back, in fact, for when he comes into it. But he's better known, I think, for foreign language stuff, although he was in The Peacemaker with George Clooney not long before this, a film I love, Nicole Kidman as well. Yeah. But Blythe, what is Blythe Danner most famous for?
Being a mother of Gwyneth Paltrow.
Being Gwyneth Paltrow's mom, and you can see it in their face, actually. Yeah, and she was married to Bruce Paltrow, obviously, was an actor himself and stuff. So but she's not one of those actresses who was ever mega famous. She's not nearly as famous as her daughter ended up being. But she was always ticking along in, like you say, Broadway, TV shows. She was a face, you go, oh yeah, it's her. Probably one of those things was, oh yeah, it's her. What's her name again? Oh yeah, Blythe Danner. But she is very good. She's very good at being that one of those strong, very serious-minded FBI. There's not much character there as such, but she's good in that role of being, a strong female presence operating at the. Yeah, it's funny because, and I'm sure that the next few minutes we'll get into the character of Cassidy more, but I just tend to think of her not necessarily as a conspirator, but she's just very good at a job.
She was, I think the idea of a character was to be a 40-year-old FBI agent come ex-lawyer. That was the kind of scope that they were looking for. Yeah,
that fits. She's all. You could almost imagine Scully being like her if she was ever assistant director of the FBI.
Yeah,
almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that very
absolutely.
Sort of down the line, firm but fair woman who's not corrupt, but just isn't going to let anyone get away with anything. So yeah, it's there'll be more, I think, talked about her in the conversation she has as Scully's being interrogated as we go. But the final shot is of Skinner. Woohoo! First appearance of Skinner. Skinner doesn't have a lot to do in this film, but he pops up every now and then. But he doesn't. What do you make of how he looks? Because Mitch Pileggi's he's so good at Mitch Pileggi at conveying a lot without any dialogue. It's all in his face. It's all in his movement, his expression, his body. He's sort of sitting at an angle, isn't he, with his elbow propped up, but he looks uncomfortable, I think. Yeah. Don't you?
Well, the thing, I know we've discussed Skinner a lot on the podcast here with yourself and various other people, but the thing about this one to me, just purely because of being an X-File fan, is like, you've got through a lot of shit. You've given me a lot of shit over the past few years. This has got to be the worst one of the lot. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh no. Yeah. But because he's on the panel, he's having to deal with this, and it's a professional review board. He knows what they're like, and at the end of the day, he wants to bat for them, but it's like, you've put me in an untenable position here that I've got to somehow be because I think later on in the film, I think they talk about the vote against it. I can't remember if that happens or not, but unless it's it's the beginning, isn't it? When they have the vote, the professional review board, when they want to put Moda back on. So it's that kind of aspect, though. That's a nice little tag on to the rest of that, but that he's having to jump between the line of being their boss and having to deal with the fact that at the end of the day, they were right. They're the ones that had done it. But then the story is being shaped, which I know that, the next guest and host will talk about.
Absolutely. But it's classic Skinner, isn't it? It's stuck in the middle, right?
Stuck in
classic
the middle,
Skinner. So I'm sure we'll get more into that as time goes on. So we're done for a while now, because obviously as part of the Fight the Future Minute, we're doing a mix of guests and hosts. So next time you're going to have a new host and a new guest for a little spell. But I will be back later in the run to talk more X-Files Fight the Future Minutes, as will you, Kurt, back later.
Yeah, I will.
I think you're returning along with the Syndicate as well, which will be exciting.
I've always wanted to be part of the Syndicate, and I feel that this is my way in.
Exactly, yeah.
And we're going to meet in London as well, which is great, because that means I don't have to fly to New York.
No. It's more convenient for both of us, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
That they're meeting in Britain. Cheers for that, bad guys. Good stuff. So, you next time, guys, you can enjoy Scully's OPR continued grilling. But until then, Kurt, you'll be back later. Do you want to point people towards what you're doing and where you're going to be if they want to hear you more?
No problem. You can catch me on my Twitter feed at rmuldrake, so RMULDRAKE. As many people will know, I know we've dealt with Terry O'Quinn over the past few episodes. I'm doing the Millennium podcast for you, Tony. We're co-producing that together, and I'm showrunning that. So anyone who's interested in Millennium or wants to get interested into Millennium, follow us on at The Time Is Now Pod. So catch me on there, and depending on where I am with it, you'll also find Pick Up a Podcast as well, which is a podcast that I do where I talk to people like Tony, for example, which is talking about podcasters, about what they do and what shows they're on and how they've come about podcasting and how they record and things like that. So catch me at Pick Up a Podcast on there as well.
By the time this airs, I think we'll have had more Pick Up a Podcast and quite a lot of Terry O'Quinn discussion on Millennium. So The Time Is Now. So plenty to go and check out, guys, on the We Made This Podcast network, at We Made This Pod on Twitter. If you want to find me, I'm at AJ Blackwriter, and you can see what I'm up to there. So, thanks for listening, guys. Tune in next time for more Fight the Future Minute, but always remember, trust no one. Previously on the We Made This network. Mild threat and peril.
Girl Next Door falls into that category as well. And again, I watched it today, I went, can't be as bad as I remember. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Shouldn't have watched that. It was fucking horrendous. Everyone our age, if they don't like horror, everyone our age has seen, Halloween H2O at the very least, because it was around when we were teenagers.
I think, to be honest, Halloween H2O was the first one I saw.
I think it probably was for me as well, actually.
Yeah, and I think it was because I fancied Josh Hartnett as well, because I'd seen him in The Faculty.
That's not why I watched it.
Life's milestones
Have you decided, or do you have a strong prediction on what would be the song that you have for your first dance?
Oh, that's so good. Again, I think it'd be a song that's like, you know, for both of us is a big song. This is for like an epic first dance, and again, this is like big budget, but you know, Greatest Showman, Rewrite the Stars.
Right, okay.
You know, like they have the whole routine with the ribbon and all that stuff, like the trapeze and all that.
Yeah.
If we were both that dedicated, I'm dedicated enough to do this, and if the other person was interested that much in Greatest Showman, which I feel like a lot of people are,
it's a good film.
To do the whole trapeze thing for Zac Efron and Zendaya.
As your first dance?
Yeah.
That's
How
amazing.
epic would that be? Because everyone's like, you know, oh, let's just put on an Ed Sheeran song, and everyone's like, oh, that's kind of cute. But imagine it's like, why don't we and like the two of us are just there, and everyone's like, what the?
That would be amazing.
What the?
You won't forget me.
What do you actually think of that scene where they first meet, Sam? Like by the fireside. What is your take on it?
That is actually my favorite scene.
Okay.
I love that scene so much. It explains both of the characters. I love it. Kind of serves as a double. It's not only a great amount of exposition. We get to learn about both Joan and Larry and their hopes and dreams, but we also see them fall in love. This is basically the only opportunity that we get to see the romantic relationship in the first place before we see it put to the test in the later parts of the film.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.